Hi everyone, my name is Clarissa Moon, and today I am here with a theater artist who does it all. Not only does she perform professionally all over the country, but she's also a director, producer, and a theater educator. Please welcome Roberta Emerson. Hey
Hi
Roberta!
guys, hello, how are you?
You've also had a lot of experience doing voiceover work.
hmm
What's that like?
Great, because you get to go to work in your pajamas and nobody has to see see you. It's an interesting kind of avenue in the industry to get into, and yet it's really fun.
Does it require any sort of special training?
I would say yes and no. You're just taking the training that you already have as an actor and figuring out how to do that in this, little box with a microphone. And it feels like you shouldn't be as animated because you're in this kind of, small contained space, but the exact opposite is true. You should be as animated as possible. So no, there's no special training, but I definitely think you get better as you've done it a couple of times.
So when you're doing voiceover work, is it just like announcements? Like what's that range?
So I've done a little bit of everything. I've done voiceovers that you'll hear in a commercial where it's like, the I guess sexy voice that comes in over the over the picture that's being shown. I've also done video games, and that's fun because like you're literally in there like, yeah, go run, get them, and like talking to nobody. There's a wide range of like what is normally called upon as far as voiceover, and they're all a little different as to what they ask for.
What's it like doing film work?
Interesting, because I'm trained as a classical actress mostly for theater, and of course that training like transfers to film. But I'm often told, be a little smaller when I do film, because I do tend to have a very big, broad voice and bigger mannerisms just from my classical training, if you will. But yeah, it's interesting. It's just a little bit more intimate than I think the stage is. And it's also fast. Like I guess that would be the difference that I would say with theater and film, whereas theater you can kind of get to work on things and experience things and it comes out kind of naturally. So many times in film, because they're working on a budget, you've got one or two takes and you just got to do it and move. So it's like your choices have to be a little bit more accurate and detailed and bigger, and you get the shot and you go.
This is something I've always wondered. What does a
Mhm.
film rehearsal look like?
It depends on the director. Like I've had films that rehearse pretty similarly to theater in terms of like we sit around and do table work, and sometimes they'll get us on our feet with the other actor we're in the scene with. I've also had films that didn't rehearse at all. Like, here's your part, here's your script. Most films cast kind of directly to what they know they're going to get in the story, whereas theater can be a little bit more fluid. I've seen both. You just kind of got to go with the flow and see what comes up. Yeah.
What are your favorite kinds of roles to play?
People that are flawed. They're not good, they're not bad. They're just there's a lot going on.
Are there any characters that you've learned something about yourself from?
Hopefully all of them. You hope you learn from all of them. I remember when I can talk about playing Juliet, I guess. I played Juliet, and Juliet was definitely one of those roles that I was like, I'll never play this role, right? Like, I never saw myself as an ingenue, even when I was in high school. And then in playing her, I learned that the vulnerability in my strength is actually what makes me stronger. I tend to be a very strong actress. I like to play strong characters. I like to do characters that, show a lot of, I don't know, guts or balls or however you want to say it. But playing that made me soften in a way that I've tried to include, that aspect of myself in all of my work.
So let's move to directing. What do
Cool.
you like about directing?
I like pulling the story together. And interesting enough, these days I like directing more than I like acting, which scared me a little bit. Like, it scared me to admit that a little bit because I was like, I'm an actor, it's kind of all I know. But there is something about being able to control the stories that I tell in a collaborative way. I feel like I'm doing more when I'm directing than when I'm acting, or have the capability of doing more. And that's something that's important to me. So, yeah.
Moving out of directing and into educating, can you tell me a little bit more about the teaching you do with social awareness and activism?
Yeah, it's important for me for young people to have the awareness of some of the social issues that we kind of see springing forward, even today especially. And it's always been important to me. I think one of the main reasons I do theater, or I like to do theater, or this particular industry, is because I think it is a way to use our voices as artists to kind of amplify the issues and problems we have in the world. And I'm a huge believer that the next generation is the generation that's going to change that. So I do a lot in terms of how do I impart just some experiences, not all, because of course I don't speak for everyone, but how do I impart some experiences into activating the voice of the next generation. So a lot of the work that I do or have done is geared to that. Some of it is also, I worked with a theater where we went into underprivileged communities and just used theater to help them realize that there were other options. I did one where we took Shakespeare into a community where they would not have, access to learning Shakespeare or doing things. And I remember distinctly there was one boy who was part of our program, and he did the Hamlet speech, to be or not to be. And he had come from circumstances that most of us should never ever have to see at his age. I think he was 13 at the time. And when he did that speech, it meant something so much more. And that has always resonated with me and always kind of been the anchor as to why I go back and why I always want to tell stories like that or help kids tell stories like that or figure out those kind of things. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your current school, Montverde Academy.
Yeah, so I am the theater director, like my daytime job. I am the theater director at Mumford Academy, which is a private school. I started a theater conservatory program 4 years ago. What I love about teaching is just the connection that you can have with someone and a possible, even if it's small, change you can make for them.
Is your casting process different in the professional world versus in a student environment?
Yeah, some of it. With students, you sometimes have to go past what they necessarily bring to the audition room and look into the potential. And a lot of it is casting based on what they need. Whereas I think casting professionally is less about what they need. All you have is the audition, so you're not teaching them anything. They're bringing their kind of training and or experiences with them, and you're casting to try and create an ensemble that will work together. Whereas that's sometimes true in the education situation, but these students are still learning, so you have a little bit more leadway in what they can do. And for me, I know it's also important to make sure that I don't limit my students. And sometimes the industry can be a little limiting. I wish it wasn't. I certainly, as a director, try and not do that just because I hate it when it's done to me. But I know I really hated it when it was done to me in school. So I try not to limit my students at all so that they have more of a full range of things they can play when they leave me, knowing that, they'll also run into the industry later and be kind of box, but at least they can show someone, I also have this, I also can do this, I've also done this, which I think is easier to do in an educational setting than it is to do casting a professional show.
What do you mean by that, by the industry being limiting?
There's still just that idea that people have to play to a type, right? Like I play to a type. And even the stuff that I mostly, I guess, get called into, especially in film, maybe not so much in theater, but especially in film, you kind of see a pattern, which can feel limiting. To be specific, especially as a woman of color, there are all sorts of issues when going into theaters based on the stories that they tell, and they feel like they have to cast in a certain way sometimes that often excludes people of color and especially women of color, or limits what's out there. You're always kind of worried if you are cast in something that is not necessarily for a person of color, is it just kind of filling some kind of standard? You would hope that they're doing it because you're the best actress for a job. I don't think it's only limited to people of color, but it's definitely been my experience as a woman of color, especially in a small kind of theater community like Florida. And I think we just have a long way to go when it comes to being open to different types of casting in that way. And that, I don't know, the character in like Shakespeare in Love doesn't always have to be tall, white, and blonde. You know what I mean? Like, who says, she can't be short, 5'3" and have locks. You know what I mean? So like, there's still a lot of that happens, unfortunately. I teach my kids that it will happen, but they have to be above it regardless. And even like I said, I went to some great training programs. I love the training that I got from both my BFA and my MFA, but I was always kind of, fighting that the fact that I'm a classically trained actress and have been trained to do things like, Lady McBee and all these Chekhovian characters, and then I get in the industry and most of the things that I'm called in for are, you know, Lorraine Hansberry, August Wilson, or things that require a Black actress rather than the wide range of characters I've been taught to play. There's always that juxtaposition of where you fit. I think in this industry, that's something you have to come up against.
What do you think is the most important thing you can teach your students?
I always tell them that they're the lead in their own life, right? So I think the most important thing I can teach them is to always speak up for themselves, no matter what it is. You need to have a voice when you're dealing with, I think, the world today, and to be kind. I think i think no matter what, if you leave and you just are a naturally kind person, people will want to be around you. Not only be around you, but they'll also listen to you. So if you're kind and you have a voice, you can affect more change. That's probably the most important thing I could teach them. It's certainly what I want them to walk away from me with.
And I think that's also something that everyone can learn from.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Roberta, thank you so much for joining me.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
This has been Clarissa Moon Talks to the Stars. See you later.